It is a misconception that bushfires are natural disasters that can have a devastating impact on the local community and the environment, while in reality, with appropriate fire management and planned burnings, we can encourage vegetation growth, prevent large fires that can be potentially devastating to the local population, and protect the natural values in the long term. In this video, I will be focusing on the fire ecology of the Grampians National Park located in southwest Victoria, Australia. The Grampians National Park, also known as Garryweed, as named by the local Aboriginal community, is renowned for the diverse range of flora and fauna and valuable Aboriginal rock arts and historical sites. It's a popular destination for Australians and people from all around the world to go camping, bushwalking, and rock climbing. The Grampians National Park is located approximately 260 kilometers west of Melbourne, Victoria. It covers approximately 700 square kilometers of land that has a variety of ecological vegetation divisions, including low open woodlands, heathlands, dry forest, 4x4s, and rocky knolls. These vegetation types are especially prone to natural fires. In order to protect the surrounding communities, Parks Victoria, the managing authority of the Grampians, works with the Victorian Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning to prepare, prevent and recover from bushfires. The Grampians is assigned to Category 2 on the IUCN categories as a national park, which is managed with the purpose of ecosystem conservation and to provide appropriate recreational activities. It is managed by Parks Victoria under the Grampians National Park Management Plan 2003. This management plan has been prepared and approved under Section 17 of the National Parks Act 1975. This act supports conservation of flora, fauna, and other features of a predominantly unspoiled landscape such as the Grampians to be protected permanently for the benefit of the public. Here are some other relevant acts and policies that are taken into consideration regarding parks management. Provisions from the EPBC Act, the Native Title Act regarding issues relating to native titles, the State Environment Protection Policy from Waters of Victoria, which identifies beneficial uses of waterways, as well as Flora and Fauna Guarantee Act 1998. Parks Victoria aims to conserve, preserve, and protect the natural state of the national park. The cultural historical aspect of the Grampians will be protected. Appropriate facilities and opportunities are provided for recreation and tourism. Scientific research, surveys, and monitoring are encouraged for management and visitors to better understand the natural values and therefore allow improvements and amendments to be made to the current management strategies. Bushfires occurs regularly in the Grampians region. Most recently, in January 2014, a lightning event caused a 21,000-hectare bushfire that threatened the lives and homes of nearby residents. Forest Fire Management Victoria is an organization that connects the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, Parks Victoria, VicForests, and Melbourne Water to reduce the risk and impact of bushfires. They specifically developed a fire operation plan for the Grampians region for planned burnings and non-field treatments. In order to make natural fires less intense, leaves, tree branches, barks, and grass are removed through controlled burnings. This also maintains ecosystem resilience, as for many flora species, bushfires are necessary for their growth. The following stakeholders are involved and affected by the management and conservation of the Grampians National Park: Aboriginal communities and organizations, animal welfare groups, building industry and real estate organizations, community and special interest groups, environmental, tourism, sport and recreational groups, industry-based research and development corporations, land and water managers, planners, developers, and information users, local, national, and international business organizations, local, state, territory, and Commonwealth government agencies and authorities, media organizations, and communication carriers. Over 900 indigenous flora species can be found in the Grampians, and 20 of the species only exist in the national park, such as the Grampians gum and Grampians parrotpea. A variety of flora species can be found in the Grampians due to its large-scale and diverse vegetation communities, including rocky outcrop woodland, heath woodland, sclerophyll woodland, grassy woodland, and dry forest. The Grampians has a number of mountains covered by sandstone deposited over a period of 15 million years. In nutrient-deficient ranges, such as rocky woodland and heath woodland, the vegetation community is dominated by eucalypt species such as the brown stringy bark and ash-brown top. The prickly tea tree and the silver banksia are the most common type of understory. The variable sword edge is the most common type of ground vegetation. For grassy woodland areas located in lower altitude in the park, the river red gum is the dominant tree species that grows over a grassy layer consisting of Xanthonia and Stipa species. The shrub layer consists of native cranberry heath, Daphne heath, and mistflower. The understory are thinly dispersed and dominated by the grass tree species. Dry forests are dominated by eucalyptus species such as the brown stringy bark, longleaf box, ash-brown top, and swamp gum. Open forests are dominated by river red gum. The shrub layers are often poorly developed. The Grampians contain a wide range of threatened flora species, including 148 species that are threatened in Victoria, 40 of which are threatened nationally, and 30 are listed in the Flora and Fauna Guarantee Act 1988. Grants are provided for the protection and conservation of endangered flora species. For example, the Friends of Grampians Scaryweed were provided with a Community for Nature grant back in 2015 for the construction of fences to protect the McIvor spider orchid that was discovered in the Grampians. This orchid species is listed as endangered under the EPBC Act. It is endemic to Victoria. The survival of endangered species such as the McIvor spider orchid is at risk from 3 types of threats: grazing, habitat disturbance, and invasive species. National recovery plans are prepared by the Victorian Department of Sustainability and Environment following the EPBC Act. The recovery plan provides information on potential threats to the endangered species and recovery measures to prevent extinction. Other endangered species includes the clover glycine, southern pipewort, early golden moths, and Mount William grevillea. Invasive weed species puts the survival of these endangered species at risk. The sallow wattle is a highly invasive weed in the Grampians. After the fires in 1999 and 2014, the seeds were released and spread around the park. After a fire event, the nutrient-rich soil is perfect for invasive weeds to thrive. They put native plants at risk as they prevent any species from growing underneath by forming a solid wall. Other significant weeds include blackberries, boneseed, boxthorn, broom, and gorse. Invasive flora and fauna are managed under the Wimmera Invasive Plant and Animal Management Strategy. 2 types of approaches are used to prevent and control invasive weeds. First one is the species-based approach. Weed alert programs were developed to surveillance and identify high-risk weeds. Partner organizations and community volunteers are trained to identify and report new problem weeds so they can be eradicated before spreading to a bigger scale. The second approach is the asset-based protection approach. Once the invasive species has spread and cannot be eradicated immediately, this approach aims to protect the natural landscape and its biodiversity from further threats from the invasive weed species. Cytophthora cinnamomi, also known as the root rot fungus, has infected several sites within the park. They are an active threat to native plants and endangered species. Active sites are regularly monitored. The spread of PC is accelerated by the use and transport of infected soil and gravel used for road construction. The infected gravel pits will be reduced in the near future to prevent further spread of the fungus. The Grampians is the home to over 230 bird species, 40 mammal species, 30 reptile species, 11 amphibian species, and 6 native fish species. The type of vegetation community in the shrubby woodlands supports the living condition required by a wide range of nectar-feeding birds, and the tall open forests are suitable environments for hollow-dependent species, for example the powerful owl. The condition in the wetlands in South Grampians supports a variety of water birds, such as the great egret. Rocky slopes and cliff faces are suitable nesting locations for the peregrine falcon. Emus can also be found in the lowland areas. Redneck wallabies, black wallabies, and great kangaroos can be spotted everywhere in the park. The growing population is regularly monitored to prevent overgrazing. Red deer, koalas, rare mouse species, and other threatened species and native species also reside within the park. A number of fauna species are listed as vulnerable and endangered statewide and nationally. Particularly the survival of heath mouse and smoky mouse are dependent on appropriate fire regime. Threatened species such as the squirrel glider, powerful owl, and king quail are also protected and maintained by parks management. Recovery plans are prepared and put into action for fauna species listed under the Flora and Fauna Guarantee Act. There are 3 invasive animals that pose significant threats to the ecosystem of the Grampians National Park. The first one is the European rabbit. Rabbits are the most destructive animals in the Grampians. They are listed as a threatening process under the Flora and Fauna Guarantee Act. They start erosion and threaten waterways. Rabbit grazing can also limit the regeneration of native flora species, as well as endangered species that are near extinction. Viral diseases that are deadly to rabbits were introduced in the past to reduce rabbit populations successfully. The second one is the red fox. Red foxes predate on native animals for survival. They are one of the main causes of local fauna species extinction. And lastly, feral cats. They have similar impact on native fauna species as red foxes. They are one of the leading causes of the decline in population for native animals. They also predate on near ground level nesting birds. Asset-based strategy may be used to protect certain endangered fauna species. Flora and fauna species are recorded on an online database. Threatened species are continually monitored, and grants are provided for the protection and regeneration of these species. For endangered species such as the spotted-tailed quail, Parks Victoria is attempting to gather samples on site through hair follicles. Cage traps and trained dogs are also used to find an existing population. Remote camera surveillances are used to monitor fauna activities. To the Jabwaran and Yabajali traditional owners of the park, the Grampians, also known as Garrowweird, is a spiritual place that provided sources of food, water, and shelter. This is evident through the rock art sites in Garrowweird that account for over 90% of rock art sites in Victoria. Parks Victoria has established a partnership with the Indigenous nation to preserve and maintain the rock art sites and Indigenous flora and fauna species. All Aboriginal artifacts and sites are protected under the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Heritage Protection Act, the Archaeological and Aboriginal Relics Preservation Act, and the National Parks Act. Prior to European settlement, the Indigenous nations have conducted regular burnings to herd games like kangaroo and emus. The traditional burnings conducted at lower temperature than modern fuel reduction burns provided nutrient-rich soil for the native grassland. In May 2017, the culture of traditional burnings was revived by a partnership between the traditional owners and Park Victoria. The Jajawaran community conducted a cultural burn in central Victoria, providing parks management with new knowledge and techniques that can be incorporated with modern burning techniques in the future for more efficient and sustainable fuel reduction. The Grampians is especially susceptible to natural fires. The flora and fauna have a high resilience to fire disturbance, and fire events tend to have a positive impact on the native flora and fauna species. Each plant and fauna species has evolved their own fire regime. The impact from fire events depends on fire frequency, seasonality, and the intensity of the fire. If bushfires occur outside the natural fire regime, it could have a detrimental impact on the vegetation communities. For example, the seeds of the desert banksia are stored inside a hard cone that will only open when the temperature rises above 75 Celsius. The fire regime of this particular plant requires fire frequency of 6 to 50 years for the species to seed and regenerate. Some species, such as the parrot peas and wattles, store their seeds underneath the soil. Fire increases soil temperature and stimulates growth. One of the most common eucalypts in the park, the brown stringy bark, has developed adequate fire resistance to persist through different fire regimes. The effect of fire regime can be exemplified through the alpine ash forest in the highlands of Tasmania, where the eucalypt community was replaced by a rainforest through gradual succession due to the absence of fire events. A number of studies have been conducted regarding the soil pH level post-fire and its positive impact on flora diversity. In one particular study named Environmental Correlation of Vegetation Patterns and Species Richness in the Northern Grampians, published by the Australian Journal of Ecology, collected on-site samples from a variety of vegetation communities where it shows flora diversity was the highest 2 years after a fire event. Similar to local flora species, fauna species native to the Grampians have also adapted strategies to survive bushfires through burrowing, avoidance, or active use. Mammals such as wombats, snakes, and lizards can retreat to burrows for high chance of survival. Less mobile animals such as koalas and ringtail possums are generally incapable of escaping from high canopy fires. Highly mobile fauna species such as kangaroos and birds are able to escape from bushfires. Similar to indigenous burnings, plant burnings are deliberately introduced to designated areas to remove natural fuels such as leaves and tree branches to reduce the intensity of potential natural fires that are harder to control. It also encourages the regeneration and regrowth of native flora species. Plant burns are conducted by Forest Fire Management Victoria, an organization with staff from the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, Parks Victoria, VicForests and Melbourne Water. Fire management and plant burns are conducted following the regulation and guidelines provided in the Code of Practice for Bushfire Management on Public Land. The Country Fire Authority and Fire Management Victoria works together with private owners of land adjoining burn areas to achieve the best bushfire management outcomes. One of Australia's leading fire ecologists, Professor Kevin Tolhertz from the University of Melbourne, recently developed a research program named Phoenix Rapid Fire. This program allows fire agencies to analyze and predict bushfire risk through stimulating bushfires in an area in different weather conditions, fire histories, and vegetation types. With the use of new technologies, fuel reduction can be conducted more efficiently and accurately. The climate in the Grampians has been getting warmer and drier. This trend is likely to continue in the future years due to the effect of global warming. The harsher weather condition can have a devastating impact on the ecosystem. With the temperature rising, the Grampians can expect more natural fires. Although occasional natural fires can have a positive impact on the native plants and animals, more frequent fires at a higher temperature and larger scale can have a devastating impact on the ecosystem and surrounding communities. The changing fire regime in the Grampians will become too harsh for the native species. We can expect the vegetation communities and fauna diversity to alter in the future years. The increase in temperature and increase in the likelihood of flooding will affect the infrastructure and the local community negatively as well. The Victorian government has in turn set out plans and strategies to prepare for extreme weather conditions in the Grampians. To prevent and control flooding, road heights will be increased and stormwater capacity will be adjusted to an increased capacity to prepare for heavier downpours. Guidelines and signs are provided to visitors to minimize human disturbance in the Grampians. Areas that are going through revegetation post-fire events are restricted from tourist entry. In 2014, there was a large uncontrolled bushfire started by a lightning strike that spread across northern Grampians, which had a devastating impact on the local community and biodiversity. After the bushfire, several areas in the Grampians were closed to visitors while the park rangers repaired the damaged infrastructure and restored the ecosystem. The damages led to several walking tracks, campgrounds, and rock climbing sites being closed until last year, while some areas are still going through development. Aside from accidental damages to the environment, damages have been done in the past to Aboriginal sites through tourist ignorance, painting graffiti over the Aboriginal artworks on rock faces. The level of fragmentation in the Grampians is low in comparison to the rest of Victoria. As the area has a lot of large sandstone and mountains, agricultural development will be difficult. As shown in the map provided by the Victorian Land Use Information System, the surrounding areas are mostly private farmlands developed for primary production, which are mostly pasture and grassland used for cattle grazing. The Grampians could be considered as a remnant in a largely altered landscape. Not only is the park suitable for recreational activities, it also provides a hospitable environment for a large variety of native species. As a community, we need to continue to protect this natural landscape by reducing carbon emission to prevent further global warming and contribute to biodiversity